Good afternoon and welcome back. You're watching the Midday Report and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. Ukraine's President Zelenskyy has his hands full following high diplomacy meetings with EU allies, the EU Commission and NATO leaders. All this as he is revising the peace plan to obtain security guarantees and post-war foundations for reconstruction. But the debate on the future of Ukraine continues as the US and Ukraine do not see eye to eye on the territorial concessions around Donbas. More on Zelenskyy and what to expect in terms of a peace plan counterproposal in this report.
It's been a busy week for Zelenskyy. He has met with the leaders of the coalition of the willing, held a video call meeting with the European allies, met with European Commission leaders and NATO Secretary General Rutte, and traveled to Italy to talk with Giorgia Meloni. All of this is being done so that Ukraine can present its own version of a peace plan as early as Wednesday. The plan consists of 3 documents that will combine the most important components for Ukraine in a future peace agreement. The first is a peace plan reduced from the 28 points proposed by the Americans to 20.
The second document concerns security guarantees. I'm awaiting relevant proposals from our military and their discussions with the Americans, and all of this must be combined with the position of the coalition of the willing. The third document concerns reconstruction. Some say that this is Ukraine's economic development. This is reconstruction.
Zelenskyy also added that this week Ukraine will continue meetings with European and US officials. However, the process is slowed by Moscow's demand for the Donbas, a scenario Kyiv is unwilling to accept.
According to Ukrainian law, our constitution and international law, we have no moral right to do so either. Russia is insisting that we give up territory, but we definitely do not want to give anything up.
According to the latest estimates, Russia controls roughly 20% of Ukrainian territory, including Crimea. It holds 88% of the entire Donbas region and is pressuring Ukraine to cede the whole area in order to move forward with peace talks.
The only peace which will be welcomed by all Ukrainians sounds like this: unconditional surrender of Russian Federation. Unfortunately, it's not realistic today. So any other peace will be difficult for Ukraine, and any other peace will need compromises.
However, on another issue, President Zelenskyy reiterated Ukraine's readiness to hold elections, following remarks by the US President earlier on Tuesday in a political interview, suggesting that the Ukrainian government was using the war to avoid elections.
You know, they talk about a democracy, but it gets to a point where it's not a democracy anymore.
Zelenskyy has asked Ukrainian policymakers to prepare legislative proposals to allow for changes to the election law and framework during martial law. However, some Ukrainian politicians remain skeptical about holding elections during the active phase of war.
We just physically can't make them, can't hold them, because the security situation does not allow this when the missiles and drones are falling on the heads of Ukrainian people.
Meanwhile, life on the front lines remain dire, and with each passing day, countless lives are shattered beyond repair.
It's unrealistic to reach a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine without the involvement of Europe, Pope Leo XIV told reporters on Tuesday. The head of the Catholic Church also criticized President Donald Trump's recent statements, describing them as an attempt to break up the North Atlantic Alliance. Here's more on what the Bishop of Rome had to say.
I really think that Europe's role is very important. The unity of European countries is truly significant, especially in this case. Seeking a peace agreement without including Europe in the conversation, it's not realistic. The war is in Europe.
The remarks that are made about Europe, also in interviews recently, I think are trying to break apart what I think needs to be a very important alliance today and in the future. So it's a program that President Trump and his advisors put together. He's the President of the United States, has a right to do that.
The Nobel Peace Prize ceremony is well underway in Oslo. After much uncertainty and speculation, Maria Corina Machado, this year's laureate, is on her way to Oslo but will not arrive in time to collect the award herself. Instead, her daughter accepted the prize on her behalf. Machado follows in the steps of the Polish Nobel Peace Prize recipient and former Polish President Lech Wałęsa, who was also absent during the ceremony in 1983.
It would be a dangerous journey from Venezuela to Norway for the opposition politician, who was nominated for the Peace Prize for her fight for democracy in her native country, requiring defiance of a decade-long travel ban imposed on her by Venezuelan authorities and evading pursuit by a government intent on dismantling dissent. She has spent the last year of her life in hiding.
It elevated Maria Corina Machado to a person that now they can hang, the international community and the world can hang their hopes on, their aspirations. This helps a lot.
When a Nobel laureate is unable to attend the ceremony, the award is usually handed over to a family member or a close associate to then be delivered to the winner. Such was the case in 1983, when the Polish Solidarity leader Lech Wałęsa did not go to Oslo to collect his Nobel Peace Prize. He feared that if he left Poland, the communist authorities would refuse his re-entry to the country. Wałęsa's wife, Danuta Wałęsa, traveled to Oslo with their son Bogdan to accept the prize on his behalf, transforming the ceremony into a quiet indictment of state repression in Eastern Europe.
I went and accepted. It was a wonderful feeling and satisfaction that what's being done was done well, because it was appreciated.
As with Wałęsa, Machado's absence underscores the lengths to which authoritarian systems will go to contain democratic challengers, even when the world is watching. On Tuesday, a close associate of the Venezuelan opposition leader, Magal Lameda, assured that there was no possibility that Machado would choose exile and not return to Venezuela after receiving the Nobel Peace Prize.
She's much more dangerous to them inside the country than outside, with many of the other members of the opposition who had fled because of fears of repression, legitimate fears of repression. She just becomes another one of them. So yes, the Nobel Peace Prize does help, but it's not a guarantee.
4 Latin American presidents are present in Oslo to express support for Maria Machado. The presidents of Ecuador, Paraguay, Argentina, and Panama have been invited to the awards ceremony. They arrived at the Grand Hotel in Karl Johan in central Oslo on Tuesday evening.
The Slovakian parliament has voted to abolish the National Whistleblowers Protection Office in a move that's raised concerns about further democratic backsliding. The decision could also result in a split within the government, as the country's president Petr Pellegrini is unhappy about the decision and could veto it. The EU has already warned that the decision could breach the bloc's laws. Our correspondent for Slovakia, Andrew Sweeney, has more on the ordeal.
Slovakia's parliament has voted to abolish the country's Whistleblowers Protection Office, created in 2021 under the EU's Whistleblower Protection Directive. The office will be replaced by a new institution whose leadership will be handpicked by the government, led by Prime Minister Robert Fico. According to Martin Hojsík, Vice President of the European Parliament, the decision is an act of revenge by the Slovakian government.
They granted the whistleblower status to police officers that the government is trying to prosecute. The police officers were smeared in a Facebook post by the Minister of Interior. He ignored the court case because he didn't pick up the letters.
The Interior Minister, Martus Schutaier-Stock, denies these reports and claimed the decision to shut the office was consistent with the EU's Whistleblower Protection Directive.
The change is not personal but institutional. It is a systemic solution to long-standing issues that have arisen in the practical application of the current law, as confirmed by several court rulings.
Slovakia's President Petr Pellegrini, whose last party is part of a governing coalition, is unhappy about the bill and is reportedly considering a veto.
The whole process is truly undignified. If the government wanted to address this, I don't understand why it waited 2 years or why it had to rush to resolve it just before Christmas.
According to Hojsík, the furore over the abolition of the Whistleblowers Office could also lead to a split in the governing coalition made up of Hlas, Fico's Smer and the far-right Slovak National Party.
Fico's government has very, very tight majority in the parliament. They might not be willing to support the law when the president sends it back. There is a tension in the coalition for a number of reasons, primarily because, again, they're fighting between themselves on their interests and not really taking care of the well-being of the public.
The European Public Prosecutor's Office has warned that the abolition of the Whistleblowers Office seriously limits detection, reporting and investigation, particularly of corruption. The main opposition party, Progressive Slovakia, has called for protests to take place on Thursday, December 11th. For TVP World, Andrew Sweeney.
5 German Eurofighters have officially begun a new NATO air policing mission in Malbork, Poland. They replace British and Swedish jets to safeguard Allied skies over Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia and the broader Baltic region. Our reporter, Ovidiusz Nicieja, was in Malbork today and has this report.
German fighter jets have been deployed to patrol the skies over Poland in response to recent drone incursions and violations of NATO airspace by Russia. We are in Malbork at the 22nd Air Base in northern Poland. It's located just some 80 kilometers in a straight line from the border with Russia, and it's here that 4 German Eurofighter Typhoon jets, just like this one behind my back, will be stationed alongside personnel of 150 people for the next 4 months. Their mission is to boost Poland's deterrence, but also to monitor Polish skies 24/7 and, if necessary, respond to any threats, intercept and neutralize them, if of course necessary. This deployment takes place in the context of a recent drone incursion in Poland. 3 months ago, a number of drones violated the Polish airspace. Some of them were shot down. In this operation, it's not just Polish fighter jets that were involved. There were also jets from the Netherlands and Italian aircraft involved in that operation. That once again stressed how important this cooperation within NATO is in a geopolitical situation like this one. And even though the hope is that the crew stationed here will not have much work on their hands and not many emergencies to respond to, there is also big gratitude from the Polish authorities for this show of support in this situation from an important ally that Germany is. From the 22nd Air Base in Malbork, Ovidiusz Nicieja.
Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó announced the company operating a crucial gas pipeline for the country will find shelter in Hungary. Despite many countries in the region ditching Russia as an energy supplier lately, Budapest has dug its feet deep and refuses to budge.
These pipelines are very important for Hungary. They're part of TurkStream, a gas pipeline on the floor of the Black Sea, built as a conduit for Russian fuel, which bypasses Ukraine. At the moment, Hungary gets almost 90% of its natural gas via TurkStream. But supplies could have faced disruption due to the legal issues of South Stream Transport BV, the pipeline's operator based in the Netherlands.
We decided to relocate the company operating the TurkStream pipeline from the Netherlands to Hungary so it can continue operating smoothly despite the ongoing legal and financial attacks.
The story harkens all the way back to 2014, or the beginning of Russian aggression against Ukraine, when Moscow seized Crimea and nationalized all Ukrainian assets. One company, DTEK Krimenergo, decided to claw back its losses, estimated at around $200 million in international arbitration. Now, the case went back and forth until this week, with a Dutch court deciding to freeze assets of South Stream Transport, which is owned by the Russian energy giant Gazprom, on December 8th. The decision to relocate the operator is another sign of close energy partnership between Hungary and Russia.
We are consistent in our line on the Russian direction. I would like to emphasize that Hungary's energy security is based on stable supplies of Russian energy resources in the past, now, and in the future.
Apart from natural gas, Hungary gets most of its oil from Russia. The country also relies on Moscow when it comes to atomic energy. The newest nuclear power station will be built by Russia's state nuclear energy firm Rosatom and financed by Moscow. The European Union wants all supplies of Russian energy to stop by the end of 2027. Hungary says it's going to challenge this decision, even though the CEO of the biggest gas company in the country said recently that Hungary can live without Russian gas.
And so this would be all the latest news for now here at the Midday Report. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you back here very soon for the latest portion of the news.